Have you ever felt like you're the captain of your own ship, steering through life's choices with total control? What if I told you that neuroscience might be proving otherwise, that your brain could be making decisions before you're even aware of them? That's right. Scientists have been digging into this for decades, and the answers they've found might completely change how you see yourself, your choices, and your freedom. Let's dive into this eye-opening journey through neuroscience and philosophy to explore a powerful question. Does free will really exist? Or are we just along for the ride? In the early 1980s, neuroscientist Benjamin Libet conducted a study that would change how we think about free will. It was simple on the surface. Participants were told to move their finger whenever they felt like it. At the same time, Libet recorded the electrical signals in their brains and asked them to note the exact moment they felt the intention to move. Here's the shocking part. Libet found that the brain's readiness potential, a signal that the brain was preparing for movement, happened about 300 milliseconds before participants reported making a conscious decision. In other words, the brain seemed to decide before the person was even aware of it. This blew minds. If the brain starts acting before we consciously choose, are we really in control? Or are we just watching ourselves act, then claiming the decision afterward? The experiment sparked decades of debate and dozens of follow-up studies. Some researchers took it as proof that free will doesn't exist. Others argued that conscious will can still veto an action even if the brain starts it. Either way, Libet's experiment opened the door to a bigger question. If our thoughts and actions are shaped by unconscious brain activity, where does that leave our sense of freedom? Libet's results suggest this timeline. First, the brain gets ready to act. Then, we become aware of the intention. Finally, the action takes place. Some researchers argue this implies our decisions are made subconsciously, and consciousness is more like a news anchor reporting what's already happened, rather than the commander giving orders. Others disagree. They say we still have a chance to veto the action, what Libet called the free won't. Basically, even if your brain starts a process, you can consciously choose to stop it before it happens. It's like your brain hands you a suggestion, but you still get to approve or reject it. After Libet's famous experiment in the 1980s, the question of free will didn't fade. It exploded. Scientists, philosophers, and psychologists all jumped in with new studies and fresh debates. What started as a single spark became a wildfire of questions. Are we really making choices, or are we just watching them unfold? One of the biggest follow-ups came from neuroscientist John Dylan Haynes in 2008. He used more advanced brain scanning technology, fMRI, to see if the brain's decision-making process could be detected even earlier than Libet had found. And guess what? His team could predict with up to 60% accuracy what decision a person would make 7 seconds before they were even conscious of it. That raised even more questions. If our brains are preparing to act several seconds before we think we've decided, what's left for the conscious mind to do? But not everyone agrees on what this means. Some critics argue that the decisions being measured in these studies are very simple, like pressing a button. These aren't moral decisions, emotional choices, or life-changing reflections. They're low-stakes, automatic choices. So, can we really apply this research to complex real-life behavior? Other scientists suggest that consciousness still plays a key role. The fact that your brain starts prepping doesn't mean your conscious mind has no influence. It might just be that your awareness kicks in later to approve, change, or redirect the decision. Think of it like a manager who doesn't start the work, but has final say before it's submitted. Then there's the idea of multiple selves from psychology. You might have many competing inner voices, impulses, values, fears, memories, all influencing your decisions. Neuroscience shows that our brains are not one unified voice, but more like a committee. Some parts of your brain want instant pleasure, while others urge long-term planning. Free will, in this view, could be the process of navigating those inner voices consciously. This debate also touches ethics and the justice system. If behavior is driven by brain patterns outside of conscious control, how do we hold people accountable for their actions? What does punishment even mean if someone didn't choose to do wrong in the way we traditionally believe? These questions aren't just academic. They impact how we see responsibility, blame, forgiveness, and healing. They push us to rethink what it means to be human. So now, we're in this strange space. Neuroscience is offering us powerful insights about the brain's role in behavior, but the interpretation is far from settled. We're still figuring out how to connect the dots between brain data, personal responsibility, and human experience. And that's where things get really interesting. Let's move into philosophy for a moment. So what do philosophers say about free will? While neuroscience raises tough questions, philosophy offers different ways to think about it without getting lost in complexity. Determinism says everything we do is caused by something else, our biology, past, or environment. In this view, free will is an illusion. We're shaped by forces we don't control. Libertarian free will disagrees. It says we do have the power to make real choices, even if we're influenced by our background. We're not robots. We can reflect and decide. Then there's compatibilism, a middle path. It says we can be both determined and free. Our choices are shaped, but as long as we're not being forced, we're still making them. These ideas matter because they shape how we see ourselves. Are we responsible for our actions? Can we change? Philosophy doesn't give one final answer, but it helps us ask better questions. You might be thinking, why should you care about this whole debate around free will, neuroscience, and consciousness? Because this isn't just some high-level philosophical argument. It touches your relationships, your habits, your sense of identity, your mental health, and even your spiritual life. Let's bring it down to earth. When neuroscience tells us that many of our decisions happen before we're even aware of them, it doesn't mean we're robots or puppets, but it does mean we have patterns, deeply wired mental, emotional, and behavioral programs that often run the show. Becoming aware of those patterns is the first step toward real growth. Here's a simple example. Say you always get defensive when someone criticizes you. If you believe you're fully in control and just choose to react that way, you might feel shame, frustration, or guilt. But if you understand that your brain may have developed that response as a protective mechanism, maybe from early experiences or repeated patterns, you can start to respond with more curiosity and less self-judgment. That's where the idea of conscious will enters the picture. You might not control the first spark of emotion, but you can influence how you respond next. And that's huge. It gives you room to pause, to reflect, to choose. The truth is, most of us live much of our lives on autopilot. We react, we repeat old habits, we go through motions. But learning about how your brain works can be empowering. It allows you to slow down that autopilot and gently start steering the ship. This also matters in how we view other people. If someone lashes out or makes a poor decision, instead of labeling them as bad or assuming they just made a conscious moral choice, you might consider what hidden programming, trauma, or unconscious pattern is behind it. That doesn't excuse bad behavior, but it does add compassion to the mix. And maybe the most personal way this matters is in how you handle shame. If you've ever struggled with addiction, procrastination, anxiety, or negative thought patterns, you've probably felt like a failure at some point. But realizing that your brain is wired for efficiency and that many of your struggles aren't moral failures but survival strategies can be a game changer. Understanding the neuroscience behind choice helps you be kinder to yourself. And from that place of kindness, you gain more power to actually make different choices. So the next time you find yourself reacting in a way you don't love, take a breath. Ask, is this my conscious choice or a reflex I've repeated for years? That one moment of reflection can begin to reshape everything. In short, free will isn't about having perfect control over every thought. It's about becoming conscious enough to respond with intention. And that is where transformation really begins. So where does all of this leave us? Are we robots acting out brain impulses or conscious beings making real choices? Maybe it's not either or. Maybe free will isn't about absolute control, but about our ability to respond wisely to what's already happening inside us. The brain may begin a process, but our awareness, our conscious self, can step in, reflect, and steer. It's not about overriding the brain, but working with it. Think of it like a dance. The brain provides the rhythm, the unconscious urges and impulses, but our conscious mind gets to decide how we move to that rhythm. We may not choose the beat, but we still choose how to respond. The more aware we become of our inner processes, our triggers, habits, and biases, the more freedom we gain. True free will may not be about starting every thought, but about how we respond to them. In the end, free will may not be a switch we flip on or off. It may be a muscle we strengthen, a practice of awareness, and an ongoing dance between impulse and intention. Thanks for watching. Stay curious, stay thoughtful, and take a moment to subscribe for more stories that explore the mind, the soul, and everything in between. We'll see you in the next video.